It's the Traumedy Podcast. Trauma plus comedy equals Traumedy. This week on Traumedy.
But if you think about it, 40 million people died in Asia during World War II.
I did not know that.
And that's like, one of the medium estimate. Like some estimate goes as high as like 42 million, some as low as like 30 million. People don't know about it because of these mass graves that was happening throughout like China, for example. They would like kill a bunch of people and then put them in mass graves.
You're listening to Traumedy, the podcast that helps you take your pain and play with it. I'm Nancy Norton. I am a former nurse, comedian, and keynote speaker about the power of humor, why we need it, how it helps us.
Bring the power of humor to your next event with award-winning comedian Nancy Norton. Nancy got out of healthcare for the same reason a lot of people get into it, to save lives. Message Nancy at nancynorton.tv. The Traumedy Podcast is sponsored by Crybaby Badass. You have to feel it to heal it. You are a Crybaby Badass luminary. See your light in the mirror. Do you have a trauma? Hey, you listening, do you have a Traumedy story to share? If so, send Nancy a message at nancynorton.tv.
This is a very special guest. She is an expert in World War II atrocities of the Pacific, specifically against Asian Americans. And I got to say, I've listened to this twice. I'll probably listen to it several more times because it's so much information in here. She has so much information, and the calling that she's answered to get to the truth, to tell these stories that have been incredibly underrepresented in our education system and in history, in documentation. So she's been documenting and educating folks. And also we talk about how can we learn from the past to not repeat it. My son, Nathaniel, sits in on this session because he has always been enthralled with World War II. He's just always wanted to understand it, study it. He knows so many things about it. And he wanted to sit in and hear this. It's just upsetting because we recorded this on February 17th, which now I'm uploading this on March 3rd. And when we recorded it, we didn't know that we would be at war so soon with Iran. So there's part of this episode where they talk about, I hope we don't go to war with Iran. And unfortunately, we're there. I just want to say your life is still so important that you enjoy your life, that you take breaks. Nathaniel and I went on a long hike today. We left our home here in Boulder and just started walking towards the mountains. And we walked up into the foothills, and we were just both saying how we need to do this more often. Nature is so healing, and we need to get recharged so that we can do what we're called to do. And for me right now, I am called to raise the frequency. It may not sound like it in this moment, but I'm doing my best. I just did a show for first responders in Ohio. I find it very fulfilling to do a show that helps people either forget about their problems for a little while or put them in perspective or add a little just ridiculous dark humor that helps us release that vicarious trauma. All right, enjoy this episode. I'll see you on the other side. All right, welcome to Traumedy. My guest this week is an author, a historian, an educator, a podcaster, the co-founder of the Pacific Atrocities Education. Please welcome Jenny Chan and my son Nathaniel Norton in the house. Welcome, Jenny.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us my first time on Riverside and for your patience learning the technology.
I love their technology. It's like a really great software for me to use. I hope you like it.
Yeah, I'm so glad you encouraged me. And thank you for reaching out. I was just so honored because on this podcast, obviously, I talk to a lot of comedians about their trauma, how they cope with it, and then an occasional expert. And it's so exciting when we get an expert like you. And thank you for reaching out. I guess you said you saw me on a comedy reel or something.
Yeah, on Instagram, and then I also saw it on YouTube, and so I guess the algorithm likes you lately.
I wish it liked me more, but yes. But I think it says something about your algorithm. Maybe you listen to a lot of comedy or watch a lot of comedy too.
I do actually. I just saw a comedy show in Monterey during Valentine's Day. Shen Wang, have you heard of him? He wrote like Fresh Off the Boat. He used to write for Ali Wong. He's quite funny. And I just saw his show. It was very chill and very relatable, very funny.
Wow, have you ever seen him, Nathaniel?
I don't think so.
Not yet? Well, we will now. We're going to now. We're giving him a shout out. I know Ali Wong, of course. And, I'm a boomer. Nathaniel's Gen Z. What's your generation?
Millennial.
You're a millennial, so this is cool. We're representing several generations here. And I mean, as we lead into this, we're going to talk about, what you talk about. It's in your organization, Pacific Atrocities. And
yes.
It's so important that people learn about this. And the reason Nathaniel's here is because he has been since a very young child, kind of just obsessed. I don't know if the word's obsessed, but very interested in World War II and studied it. Like I took him to the World War II Museum, which I'll be interested to hear if any of this was in the World War II Museum, because part of it is this is not taught in schools. What you know, what Jenny Chan knows, what your expertise is about.
Yeah, Nathaniel, is it taught in school, or like how is the education system like in terms of history?
It is not at all talked about at any point in time in that unit that surrounds that era in terms of history. It's not mentioned ever.
Yeah, and it's so interesting to me too in terms of like education and history and whatnot. Last year, a group of high school students wanted to learn more about Unit 731, and they reached out to me to see if I can help them in terms of like research and whatnot. And I did like a really quick search. I think our organization is the only organization out there that's really focused on like the Japanese atrocities on Asia and the war crimes that have been committed in like World War II. And it's so fascinating to me that you see that like 80 years later, like we're kind of the only ones doing that.
Yeah.
Isn't it like incredible?
It's so neglectful to me. It's so upsetting to hear that these people, not only, just the little I've read about, it's called Unit 731. The atrocities are just, I can't hardly go there. First of all, tell me how you came to study this and how, this became like your life's work, it sounds like.
Yeah, so when I was growing up, my grandma hated the Japanese. I think you also told me about how your father didn't want you to buy a Japanese car.
That's right. I bought my first car with my ex-husband. We bought a Honda Accord, which, of course, Accord is supposed to mean peace. Anyway, he was so upset. Like, how dare you, buy a Japanese car when he was involved in World War II in the Merchant Marines.
Yeah. And so whenever I was watching like Doraemon or any similar Japanese anime, my grandma get like so visibly upset. And it's just, and at first I was like, wow, what happened to my grandma? Like, why is she getting this way? Why is she so triggered? And I didn't really know. She was just calling them turnip heads and whatnot. And that's her word for calling Japanese people. And I didn't know like that she had gone through the occupation of Hong Kong until the military. We found like a box of military yen from her belonging after she passed away. And what's interesting also is that like we never really learned about it in school. Like in school, we learned like a lot about Hitler and the Holocaust and what had happened. And I remember one of my classmates was then talking about like, oh, the Japanese people were also killing babies with bayonets and whatnot during rape of Nanking, and she was almost like gotten into trouble for it. The teacher didn't know what to do with her.
So that was like she was being talking out of turn, or that she didn't believe her?
Right,
Or?
exactly. Or, you know, comparing kind of like atrocities and whatnot. And it wasn't until I finished college and I had like a really boring job and I was like really reading into history and what had happened. And I remember like reading The Rape of Nanking and all these other books. And I was at my dentist, and my dentist is like a history buff. And I'm like, yeah, but do you know that like, you know, the Japanese invaded China and whatnot? And even my dentist didn't know about it. And he like loved talking about World War II history. And so I was just like, wow, this is so interesting that you like, no one knows about what had happened in Asia. And probably my grandma felt the same way, and that probably why she was getting like triggered while I was watching cartoons. And that's why I think, and I was looking up like organizations to maybe like work for and like pivot and work for. And so then like, since I got really interested in this topic, and there was no organization out there that I can be like an analyst or a researcher for. And so I thought, like, wow, maybe I can start something. And that was a very naive thought in hindsight, because it's like, it's actually a lot of work.
No kidding. Just starting from scratch. How old are you at this time when this is happening? That you're like, I
was 22, 23.
That's incredible. That's incredible. It's like a calling. It feels like a calling that you must tell these stories.
Yeah, it did feel like a calling, because I was thinking like, well, if even though occupation of Hong Kong, you know, the death toll was not as high as like an episode of Rape of Nanking, but if you think about it, 40 million people died in Asia during World War II. And
I did
like,
not know that.
And that's like, you know, one of the medium estimate. Like some estimate goes as high as like 42 million, some as low as like 30 million. People don't know about it because of these mass graves that was happening throughout like China, for example. They would like kill a bunch of people and then put them in mass graves. And then between also the surrender and the occupation of Japan, there were 2 weeks where they can destroy evidence. And so whatever that we can find from like primary source material is actually, I would call it like a source of luck, because it's just like, it's super hard to find these documents. They were declassified for like decades because of the American government was highly engaged with like these war criminals after the war. They had post-war cover-up. That's why there was not a whole lot of like organizations that would have this. Even the Russian, the Soviets actually had like a trial after the war, and then media would like accuse them of being like communist propaganda. And so a lot of those like findings were also dismissed. And so that explains a lot of the reason why like there's not a whole lot of things out there in terms of World War II in Asia.
Well, thank goodness for you, Jenny. Thank goodness for you. I saw on a link, you know, you've written several books. Would you like to talk about the books you've written? I mean, it sounds like you've had to go and get personal accounts of people. You know, that's the like anecdotal evidence, because the evidence was destroyed. Did you have a question, Nathaniel?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, so in 2015, when I first started it, the organization, I actually went to China to interview a few of these comfort women. Comfort women were basically like sex slaves during the Japanese occupation of China. And what's interesting is that these comfort women were they were brutalized. They were basically rounded up, captured, and they were like raped 10 to 15 times a day. I mean, I was listening to these stories and I was thinking like, wow, these are like terrible times. And that was also like a time where I went to like a part of China I've never been to. I didn't know that rural China can like look that rough. to be honest. And it was really in my, it took me so long to like digest those stories like emotionally too, because obviously they have gone through obviously so much. And like 10 years ago, I think that even on Instagram, like right-wing Japanese were still pretty like rampant. And after my trip, I posted about like comfort women in China, and also like the sexual slavery throughout Asia in World War II. And like I was hit back hard by like these denialists.
Wow,
I was like,
I never think about right-wing Japanese. I mean, I shouldn't be so naive. Every culture has the left and the right, I suppose, huh? The progressives and the clinging to what? Racism and so you're like,
I would call it glorifying like national myth, but they're also like glorifying their past. So like I would have people who comment like, oh, the Japanese back then who invaded the rest of Asia, they were more purified in the way that they think. Some comments like that like exist. Nathaniel, what's your like opinion on this? You're like nodding your head.
Well, I just know of the kind of I guess the social mindset of Imperial Japan in World War II, and it was very much of that superior race thinking that if they weren't somebody who agreed with them, that you were less than Japanese.
Maybe even less than human.
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean,
you could absolutely say less than human for sure.
Yeah, and it's so fascinating with like all these comments too, because like I didn't have any allies back then on Instagram like now. And so like after these like mass comments and like mass whatever, I shut down the account for a few months because I was so scared.
Because they were threatening you. They were threatening you.
Yeah, I felt threatened in a way. And I was also just like, wow, this is crazy. And they were debating me. They were like, no, these were like high pay prostitutes. This didn't happen. They were like communist, guerrilla. And then I got called communist. It was all kinds of crazy things. And so it was just too much drama. And I was also like emotionally trying to like understand the stories that these women were telling me. So so long story short, then I went on to try to post like lighter topics, but from World War II you really cannot like, you know, especially in Asia, it's like hard to find lighter topics to even talk about. And it took me 2 years to write the book Undrowning Lotus about sexual slavery in World War II, just because of like all these crazy comments and also like the emotional toll that it took on me. And
that's
like
what I was wondering about. I was wondering about that for you. You're taking on so much, and I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to send you love because you're taking on so much emotional trauma, vicarious trauma, and from all sides.
Yes. And like what's interesting during that trip to me is also like how taboo the topic of like sexual slavery was in China, of course. And like one of these women who were like raped every single day by Japanese soldiers. And after the war, she was pregnant, and then her mother told her, hey, you know, it's we should probably bury this baby in the cave. So then they went to a cave and then they buried it, and then just kind of called it a day. And she didn't talk about it until she's like super old. And that comfort woman that I was just talking about, and it's just like very interesting to me about like what kind of stories like could then be told when people are freed from like taboo and all the like societal norms. Societal norms get in the way of storytelling, I think. And in a way, it's very tragic because not only did they experience this kind of like sexual slavery in China during the war, they also experienced like secondhand, I would call it discrimination, that makes it unable to share the story, like, you know, immediately after.
It's the cascading trauma on top of trauma, and then being probably discarded and, not able to have any agency. What I appreciate about what I read about what is the name of your organization again? The Pacific
Atrocities Education.
It's so important to get the truth out. It sounded like that was your mission, to share the truth. It needs to be known for so many reasons. For the dignity and to honor those people that went through these atrocities, but also what's going on right now that we could see, like we need to start speaking the truth today about similar atrocities that are happening right now. I just think this is so important. What's the name of your podcast again?
Pacific Front Untold.
Yes. And so people can find that with that name. And what is your Instagram? How would they find your Instagram?
Pacific Atrocities EDU. And what's interesting is that Pacific Front Untold, I have James Bradley, who actually was like the New York Times bestselling author for Flags of Our Fathers. I think he was on New York Times for like a whole year. And now he's a frequent guest. Like we're good friends on WhatsApp, just because like he also believed in like telling historical truth. And also his book Flags of Our Father was eventually turned into like a Clint Eastwood movie. And so
have you heard of that, Nathaniel?
Yeah, I have.
So what were you saying? I'm sorry, I interrupted you again.
Yeah, no worries.
I'm like, I should raise my hand.
And so if people are interested in like learning more about like historical truth, and also like how America got involved in like imperialism in Asia, I think that's also, James Bradley is a great source of like resources. And we don't think about the United States as like an imperial power, because like in history classes, I think we learn more about like, the French, the British, they were like the real imperialists. But like, I think United States got involved in the Pacific, like starting with McKinley. Even before that, Matthew Perry showed up, and I think Fillmore was the president then. And when Matthew Perry showed up, I just recently read a book called Mitsui. There were a lot of people that were like fighting about this idea of becoming more westernized, and then they eventually overthrew the Tokugawa shogunate, who was in the way, and then they installed their own emperor. And then the Choshu samurai basically and the Satsuma basically took over the power in the background. And in this time period when like Matthew Perry showed up and to Japan westernizing, it led to a lot of what Nathaniel was talking about. Then they saw themselves as like not a part of Asians. They're now leaving Asia. And so now they're becoming superior than who the rest of the Asians are on this continent. And so you can even find like Baron Conical is like one of the guys who were from Japan at the time, who was a diplomat from Japan, and he graduated from Harvard. And so Teddy Roosevelt also graduated from Harvard. And so Teddy Roosevelt brought this guy to go fundraise on Wall Street. And that was also like a whole how Japan built this like imperialist machine.
Fascinating. So you think about these fraternal like relationships, like almost like fraternity brothers.
Yes.
And how much of that goes on now, like these.
Who are the people making the decisions behind closed doors with lobbyists? And, they are making decisions based on what they think about and how much money is being made when there's a war, right? Like, that's what, like, history has got me to kind of thinking. And also, it's interesting because Ishishiro, who was also a scientist who started Unit 731, which was like a biological weapons lab, he was also a part of this like movement to go to the West, to learn from the West, and to understand what is going on so that we can turn Japan into a world power. And the most interesting thing about that is that he then read the Geneva Convention where they were trying to make rules about germs. And then he said, oh, if the West is writing rules about germs, we need to harness it. We need to make sure that we use germs in warfare to basically get to as many to basically harness that power. But then he also realized that during Russo-Japanese War, like the biggest reason why Japanese soldiers were falling was because of unclean water. And so he made a water filter. He peed into it in front of the emperor. And then he was like, and then he drank the filter pee. And then he said, I can make it so good. I can make a water filter so good that it will filter pee. And the emperor like endorsed him right away, gave him a ton of funding. And so it's not like it's a rogue individual who started Unit 731. It was actually from like state funding. And so it's, yeah, sorry, Nathaniel, I saw you shaking your head.
No, I was.
Okay, here's my traumedy around that is just, I think it'd be more impressive if you drank someone else's pee. But that's just me, you know? Like, anyone can drink their own pee, okay?
Yeah.
I mean, some
But
people
that's the
do this
thing.
as a ritual. But anyway, that's just my little traumedy piece that I had to throw in there. But so this person, who was it again that's doing this?
Ishishiro.
Ishishiro. So he ends up being the person who forms Unit 731, and this is. Tell us about what do you want to say, Nathan?
Well, I was just gonna double check. At the time, he was the Surgeon General, right? Or was this?
Yes.
That was okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where he got a lot.
Yeah, so this is like
he was the United States Surgeon General.
No,
he
no,
was
no,
the
no,
Surgeon
no.
General of Japan.
Yeah.
I was going to say. Okay.
No, not of the U.S.
I didn't know everybody had a Surgeon General.
I don't know if that's what they would call him, but that's what his position was kind of attributed to.
right, and
so
like
it's not
he
like-
first started like doing all kinds of human experimentation in Japan, in Tokyo. And he thought like, wow, I'm going to get caught. So when Japan invaded Manchuria, he saw that as like his chance to expand into like a more remote village so he can expand on his research and kind of also capture more people and the larger sample size, if you think about it, because it's like a bigger country.
Yeah.
And
And just the lack of empathy for these people. I mean, I feel the same way. Honestly, I have to be honest with you guys. I obviously believe animals are sentient beings, and I hate all of the testing on animals, but obviously, especially humans. But the lack of empathy there, like, is this guy a sociopath?
I mean, it goes back to the how much higher or superior that Japanese people believe them to be over other
yes,
races.
it's actually, yeah, exactly. They think that they're superior, and so like even Kishinobusuke, who was writing economic policies for Manchuria at the time, and he's the grandpa of Shinzo Abe, the guy who was assassinated, and his political party LDP was actually funded by CIA money, and he went from like war criminal to prime minister within a decade because Eisenhower needed him to fight communism in China. So in a way, another fraternity kind of setting. And the most fascinating thing is that he had this quote where he wrote that Chinese people are like toilet water and Japanese people are like pure water. You cannot intermix the two. And so even in Unit 731, you can see that they had two different incinerators, one for Chinese people and another for Japanese, because the Japanese scientists, they did die when experiments go wrong, but they don't want them to be both incinerated in the same incinerator because of racial hierarchy.
They didn't even want to commingle in death.
No way.
And it was like this germ warfare, a race to have the best or the best understanding. I think I read on
It was, I believe, I'm not sure if it was the exact words, but around it was like the power to harness.
Yes.
Harness biological warfare was kind of like the the next super weapon in terms of how
the next frontier.
Yeah.
Just like how nowadays Lucky Palmer talks about AI and space being the next frontier. At the time, they were talking about using germs were the next frontier, and it was not just him, because he got so much money from the emperor that other scientists wanted to be just like him. And so then, like, the whole Japanese society, like science community, was doing human experimentation, and it was crazy to me to think that, like, we recently interviewed a guy in 1644, and his father worked at 1644, which was another biological weapons lab in Nanjing. So it's not just one Unit 731 lab, it was like multiple labs. And he said that he doesn't even know what his father did because they kept it so secret. And he wished that there was more research on it. Like 80 years after the war, he wishes that there was more research on what people were doing.
All of this, all of the documentation and everything around Unit 731 wasn't even acknowledged by Japan until the 90s.
Yeah.
Maybe thanks to Jenny Chan.
No, well, actually,
You were probably born in the 90s, right?
Yeah,
They knew it was coming.
Yeah, but it's like Sheldon Harris was a big he was a professor who was writing about it. He was also really trying to like document what had happened, and they were like doing nasty things, like figuring out how to do powderized anthrax, how glanders affect people. Like you can see from like the data point that it's like from 3 years old to like 81-year-old. And if you read like scientific paper from Japan back in like these days, they would list them as like Manchurian monkey, but in reality, it's like they were all humans that were being experimented on.
Long-tailed primates.
Like, what?
Yeah, I think they were called long-tailed primates.
But they were really
Yes.
It was really Chinese and these Manchurian. Yeah.
awful.
Or like, Russian victims. Some of them were
any
more like
POWs.
Russians.
Wait, there were Russian?
POWs.
POWs. Yeah.
And they deny doing research on POWs. So if you read like that Factory by Sheldon Harris, and like the first edition and second edition, if you go through them, Sheldon Harris had to remove the POW from like the second edition because he was afraid of getting sued because they kept denying it.
And he wouldn't be able to back it up in court because they had removed
because
all
the documents weren't out yet.
Yeah, because there wasn't any.
They weren't declassified yet.
It was,
and now we can tell that it's like by declassifying these documents, Sheldon Harris was actually right in the first edition of his book, which was insane. Like when I realized that, my mind was blown. Like, so now I feel like there's a huge part of censorship in this country in regards of like, and it all depends on which side you're on. And like, I don't blame people because like in the 70s and then 80s, I think there was a lot of like propaganda in regards of like communism. And so like even modern art was at one point funded by like the CIA just to see how like capitalism is superior than like communism. But at the same time, all this information gets suppressed because of basically you needed to choose the side of evil, I guess.
Well, and how do you relate that to right now? I mean, it's the propaganda. Like, as far as, I guess we don't, is it healthy to blame? I don't know. But how do we reveal the capital T truth? Like, how do we ever get to the capital T truth? It's not through the filter of the left or the right. Where and how do you do that?
I don't think there's a left or the right anymore.
Oh, okay.
Especially in this country. I think there's just one agenda. Nathaniel, you look like you're nodding and you're spacing out.
No, I was just agreeing with that point of view.
I say that to him all the time. You look like you're spacing out.
The Epstein list, right? For example, the Epstein list, the left and the right were involved. It was so nasty. I'm like, wow, it's just one big club and we're just all not in it, I guess.
And it's, oh gosh, yes, thankfully we're not in it. And this probably is reminiscent of the comfort women, right? With these children that they've enslaved and used and exploited.
And like, so I wanted to go back to Unit 731 because I don't think the story ended with human experimentation. The story really ended with how they were spraying biological like things onto like these villages. So people know about Pearl Harbor. People know about Doolittle Raid, how like FDR got so pissed that they sent the Doolittle Raiders to Japan and tried to revenge.
Oh, see, I
Do you
didn't
know about
know.
this?
No, I don't. Did you? Do you know?
Oh
about-
yeah. This was you. I mean, you and I watched the movie Midway. A big part of that movie was the Doolittle raid.
Sorry.
Yeah, and the Doolittle Raid went from like USS Hornet from the Alameda in the Bay Area all the way to Tokyo and to bomb it. And then one way to get out was either through Russia, although the pilots who went through Russia ended up being like detained for a while. And then, or you can get out, or you get killed, or you can get out through like China. But the China like airfields were not really like stabilized yet, and there were these Chinese villagers who were still like helping out the Doolittle Raiders, even though that they didn't have too much. And so then after the Doolittle Raiders left, Unit 731 decided to like spray biological weapons on these like villagers. So I want to show you guys some of the pictures that I have from so this guy was working on his field, and he contracted glanders and anthrax, and this woman Wang Shen actually brought him to like court to sue the Japanese government. Eventually they admitted that they did this like biological weapons spraying, but then they refused to pay reparation and whatnot. But just seeing that they actually like have admitted that they did it is saying a lot, because they went from like denial that this ever happened like in the 80s and in the 90s and into like, yeah, maybe it didn't happen. And like these people were working in their fields, and it's like,
Yeah, they're doing that.
they're farmers.
They're innocent. They're just out there working in their fields, and then
And this happened like decades later after the war. Like
So
their legs get so deformed, and it's just from glanders and anthrax. Later they found out. And
I had never heard of glanders.
I don't think I've ever heard of glanders either.
What is that? It's like it's a bacteria, maybe.
yeah, so it's like a glander. It's like a disease that horses normally get. It's also kind of fatal, and
I'll put a link.
So it
to
really it like it affects like the bloodstream, and it causes like infections and fever and abscesses, and that's why you see that those legs are like rotten. And some victims got so their legs get so rotten that like the whole limbs fell off, like the first picture I showed. And like it happened decades after the war, and it's like in 2014 they finally figured out skin grafting as a cure for these victims. And so I think that when people are talking about like the next frontier of war, it's really disgusting to me, because like we never know the consequences that might come up, because they're all trying to race to the next frontier of war.
just these horrible things we do to each other in the name of what? Like to gain resources. I mean, it's
Yep.
and power, and it's awful. And so that was decades later. Those pictures were from recent.
Yeah, 20, like I think that was like from 2012.
And so there's some attempt to hold them accountable or to get reparations, but that was not successful. But at least they admitted it. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
That was a big step.
They acknowledged that they did it, but they were like, nope.
No money.
No money. Jenny, can I ask you about the American flag behind you? What is the reason you have the flag behind you? I'm just curious.
I got accused of being a commie on Instagram recently, and I'm like, no, I'm an American citizen. I'm just talking about my thing, okay? So let me just display this right now.
I was
sorry.
curious. Like, just to be clear, also, I mean, with ICE running around, you're like, hey, I'm a U.S. citizen, all right? You know?
Well, just not just that. Like online discourse is now like everything is very nuanced, right? And it's just like, why are you calling me commie when I'm like saying things that are against your narrative? Or, it's just, it is, that's why I'm just like, oh yeah, let me just tape this on here.
And
Is
do
that
people?
okay? Is
Yeah.
this too much for
No,
you?
no. I just wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about your flag and why it's there, because I knew there was a reason. I was like, she'll tell me. She'll tell me why it's there. She's not.
Yeah, Nathaniel, is that too much for you?
Yes, I'm deeply troubled. Deeply troubled by the
I'm
flag.
gonna lay the soundtrack underneath. I'm proud to be an American, or at least I know I'm free. But I mean, I was thinking about. Well, I just love applying what you know to today. I mean, this is let us not. How can we not repeat these things? Is there any chance that we would ever stop being atrocious to each other, like inhumane treatment of each other on the planet? But I mean, I pray that we would stop, these innocent people that were just out farming their land, or the same even with immigration right now, rounding up immigrants that are picking fruit that we will be eating. Like, oh, how horrible. They're out there picking fruit. We're going to round them up and put them in a
Can
camp.
I just say one thing about communism though? Even
Yeah.
Jackie Chan, who made so many like great films, cannot join the Communist Party. So it's like actually a kind of like a compliment when they're like, "Oh, you're a commie," blah blah blah. It's like it actually takes a lot to be a communist. To
Yeah,
join the
you
Communist
like these
Party.
guys. I was thinking that the people that say commie, they don't even know what communism is.
No, I was gonna say that. It's like when people accuse people of being a communist now, you're not looking at communism in terms of what they're referencing and what we see today. That's not communism.
Yeah.
And just like Cuba too.
I love that
have
you
a lot
just
of
drink
friends-
out of a giant jar. Can we see the giant jar, please? Cheers.
And it was so funny.
Is that
Oh yeah,
is that mushrooms? What's in there?
just tea. I just put some tea leaves in there. You?
Okay. I love that jar. I mean, that's very Boulder, actually. You go to a
and
concert
like-
here in Boulder, people bring their jars. Like, literally, they drink out of jars.
Should have had the Ozark goblet.
And what's like people talking about like Cuba, once they get into Cuba, whatever, I'm like, actually decades of economic sanctions too would do that to a country. They're like, oh, we weren't expecting, like, if you want to see like a failed communism, you should go check out Cuba. I'm like, I don't think Cuba failed because of like communism. They had like decades of economic sanction, and even that, the Spanish like colonized them. And then like that did a number of damage. And like what I was talking about, Teddy Roosevelt and also Cuba, I mean Pacific War, they also started in Cuba. So it's like, almost a whole century of this like brutality in Cuba, and then they decided to just blame it on communism.
Yeah, it's like a scapegoat. Communism is a scapegoat, and
Because it's a clear bad guy. I think it's because then they can have a clear bad guy that they can point at, and then that way they can spend a bunch of military money.
so it's all about economics of the military machine. Is that what it is? I mean,
In a lot of ways, yeah, I think
Yeah.
so. At the end of the day, Wall Street's making money, so I don't think this is going to stop.
how do you see, like, you've worked so hard, and I know we only mentioned, I think you have, how many books do you have right now?
In terms of like our website and also like what our interns have researched, it's like close to 30, I'd say. And like we can talk about like house ships and like forced laborers as well. But yeah, anyway, it's a lot. And I started this with like almost nothing. If you think about it, like I had no ally on Instagram. So when I post, I was like, oh my gosh, let me disappear out of Instagram and whatnot. So it's like,
Yeah.
it's really, I think over the last 10 years, I've already done a lot, but like we could do a whole lot more. If we can increase our funding and also like get more allies out there.
Yeah,
Basically.
how can people support? How can people support you?
They can always donate on pacificatrocities.org.
Yeah, I think it's so important to get the word out and just to continue this work, because I mean, look at all you've done. How many years now, you say? Like 11 years? 11 years you're going on now. And you've learned so much in that time how to unearth the truth. Like, do you apply that when you see things going on here we're all over the world, but particularly here in the United States? You see these things going on. Are you able to see behind the layers pretty easily? Like, do you know how to get to the truth?
Like for
how
example,
can you coach me on that? Like, how can I, or is it something a layperson could do?
I think so. I think like especially when people start accusing you of commie or whatever, that's like so easy to like just break through. Or like when they talk about Iran, even Iran is a little bit bullshit. Excuse my language, because in terms of like, oh, we need to get a democratically elected leader in Iran, right? A lot of it, they did do that in 1953, but then in the 1950s. But then in 1953, Teddy Roosevelt's grandson staged a coup and got that guy out of there. And so, yeah, Nathaniel, did you know about that?
I did not know about that. No.
So they at first they elected a guy, and then so Teddy Roosevelt's grandson joined the CIA, and that was like the first foreign coup that they did. Was to get Iran's elected leader, democratically elected leader, out of Iran. And so then they installed the last Shah. And then now they're using the same tactic again and talk about, oh, we need to install this leader again. And I mean, who is the son of the last Shah? And by stating that they're trying to fight China too, is also very funny, because the last Shah was actually how China joined the UN. Because after World War II, China had a civil war. And then after the Civil War, PRC was in charge, but then the UN only recognized like the Republic of China, who was Taiwan. And so then the last Shah seeing Nixon being so successful with Mao, decided to also establish relationship with PRC. And the way to do that was to also invite them, and also he sent his twin sister to China. And so the whole thing about like how we need to fight Iran because of China and Russia, it's like, you're not fighting China, you're just trying to like get more power.
Okay, you see through that. You see through all of that. That's amazing.
And so for a while, I was going nuts, because I'm like watching all of these like crazy like media news, and I just don't think we can even trust New York Times anymore. I used to trust the New York Times, and now I'm like, man, this is all propaganda. Like, if you see historically, this is not true at all. And so I highly recommend reading into like what Teddy Roosevelt's grandson, I think his name is Kermit Roosevelt, what he did. And now I'm like, what is the Roosevelt family up to now? Because one century they messed with Asia, and then the grandson messed with Middle East. So whatever they do now is going to be the key to what's going to happen in the next 50 years.
Wow, that's fascinating. I got to tell you, a lot of like the acronyms and things that you've used are going right over my head. But as I'm listening to you, I'm just in awe of all the information that you have, acquired and that you can access so quickly as we're talking here. It's so impressive. I just wanted to say, like, you're brilliant. Like, I don't know how you're holding all this information in your mind, but also, how are you holding all this trauma in your body? Like, this is part of trauma, is how do you not become overwhelmed and just cave in?
I think it's almost like a game for me at this point, because it's like I want to get to the bottom of the truth, and also it's like I almost feel like it's a calling to know the truth and also to tell the truth about, especially historically, because obviously the media is not going to do that for us anymore, and we can't outsource our thinking to AI. And so it's very important, and it's so important to also read more and to like basically stay on top of what had happened in the past, because we could easily repeat it again. Just like I think it's so scary to even think about fighting a war in Iran, because so many people came back with body bags from Vietnam, as you know. And to get involved, and Vietnam is like, smaller than Iran, and Iran is like a big place. There's a lot of islands on the side, and the world, I think, saw the asymmetrical warfare that we saw in Vietnam and also in China, and that's how they even can win that kind of guerrilla warfare. And fighting in Iran, the terrain is 10 times rougher than Vietnam, I would say. And so it's incredible, and hopefully we're not going to go there, but I mean, who knows nowadays? Nathaniel, what do you think?
It's very possible that we go to Iran.
It's very possible that what?
We go to Iran. Yeah. Very possible, especially since a lot of the ways that people like to try to stay in power, especially in the history of the U.S., is start a war.
Well, and even if he doesn't start a war, even like the scariest thing is that if he gets assassinated, just like McKinley got assassinated, Teddy Roosevelt then became 5 times more brutal than McKinley was. McKinley started the war in the Pacific, and then he was assassinated, and then Teddy Roosevelt finished the Philippines, conquering the Philippines. Like more Filipinos died defending freedom of the Philippines in that time period than Americans died in D-Day. So America fought for freedom, but we never allow other people to have it.
Say that one more time.
America fought for freedom, but they never allow other people to have it. And so by conquering the Philippines, right? And what's also interesting is that if you think about it too, when JFK got assassinated, who came after him? Lyndon Johnson. And Lyndon Johnson was way more brutal in Vietnam than JFK was in terms of like the war. And so, so it's not about who's in charge, and who's behind him is even scarier in a way. And if the guy doesn't follow like to the order of whoever is pulling the string, they get rid of him, and then the war just gets more brutal. I don't even know how we started to become like that. And I was like, but the more I look into history, the more it seems that way.
That's just escalating brutality. And well, I was just way back to when you were saying you look at this like a game, and I get what you're saying. I think what you're saying is that you trying to take a distance from it, almost like looking at things without embodying it so that it doesn't make you sick. Because I just think I know you have compassion for the people you've interviewed and everything, but it's like you kind of have to look at it with some distance. Otherwise, it's just too hard.
And also go to a lot of comedy show. Like when I was just talking about Sheng Wan was so funny. It was incredible.
You got to find people that express that. Yeah. And also I think speaking your truth, writing the truth, that's expression. What I always say, if you don't express trauma, it makes an impression on you. So it sounds like to me you're doing it. I mean, you're taking in all this information, but then you are expressing it and you are sharing it, and you're trying to share all this knowledge that you have so that the people, hopefully, like that's the whole thing. It's an education. We can learn from it. Like your generation, Gen Z, I mean, I don't know like where I just don't know where everything is going. I got to be honest. But in the meantime, we got to still live. We got to laugh. We got to live. But we also got to do what our calling is. My calling is to help raise the frequency. I don't like denial of the truth. That's what Traumedy is about, is diving into the dark. But then we try to not live there. We don't want to live there.
Yes, exactly. And also just like talking about it too, like on your podcast is helping me, get that information out there. And I don't feel like I'm stuck at home reading all these like pretty nasty archives,
Yeah, you can't be alone with this. And so you have a partner, you have a co-founder, and
yes.
Did you mention them already, or?
Actually, she ditched me, and he's now working in tech. So,
so you're the founder. You're the co-founder, but now you are the primary. The director? What would you say? I don't know if you need a title, but did we lose?
Sorry, we just had. The thunder was just going, and then my dog is going crazy with this thunder right now. So.
Oh, okay. Oh, and you have a dog. I think dogs help too, don't you think? I mean,
yeah, I love my dog. He's so cute.
Having a companion animal. We had a beautiful dog named Sophie. She was a Samoyed, we lost Sophie a year ago in September, and it's like we both are missing Sophie so much because
Oh yeah.
they move the energy, and then I don't know. So your
He's
dog,
so cute.
like,
My dog he found me on the streets and he just decided to stay in my home. So there he is.
oh, he found you.
Yeah. But like, I also want to go back to the point that like, I also have a board, who also are supportive. And I think a lot of it is that people who have donated, to our organization, there are people who have experienced this part of history and they feel like their stories are not being told. Media is not telling their truth. And so then they're actually happy to see that we exist, to be able to tell the truth and what had happened in World War II, instead of like looking at it in a very Eurocentric way.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Nathaniel, what do you have? Do you want to do a little Q&A? Do you have any questions, things that have come up before? I know you've been looking forward to hearing this and talking with Jenny. And
I don't know if I have so many questions. I've just been taking in a lot of information. 'Cause
Yeah.
It's fascinating to me.
yeah,
Definitely read up on Roosevelt family. It's fascinating too.
right.
This book, The Imperial Cruise, is a good place to start with Teddy Roosevelt's like legacy in Asia, by James Bradley.
Thank you. And would you send me some of the links and I'll put them in the show notes so
Yes.
people can find everything really easily? Like, I want to take care of you. Like, I just thank you for doing this work and thank you for sharing all this information. But I also want people to send you love and support and energy. I mean, send donations, send, lots of support on Instagram and just also like energy. I'm in Boulder, so I'm going to do a little electronic Reiki.
Okay, let me drink my tea from my Boulder-looking jar.
Yeah, drink your jar tea, and let's raise the frequency. I want to help. I just want to help you stay healthy, and thank you for. I mean, you are a millennial. You have siblings, or you have family that are.
Yeah.
I bet they're very proud of you for sharing all this information and being a keeper of all the.
My mom wanted me to get a real job, but yeah, that's another story.
Well, you tell your mom that Nancy is so proud of you. I'm sure I'm probably your mom's age or a little older, so I'm very proud of you, Jenny. And Nathaniel, like I said, you've been studying World War II. I mean, there's so much and I mean, how did you learn about Unit 731? How did you ever hear about it?
I don't know exactly what, like, the exact path I took, but I remember that I was talking with a bunch of people, and I had a bunch of knowledge around the European theater of World War II, and I wanted to learn more about the Pacific, and so I started, learning more about the Pacific theater, and I started learning about how POWs were treated from China, from the Philippines, and that whole like train of thinking got me down to the mention, nothing in depth about Unit 731. So I did my own like a Google search, found the Wikipedia page, and the Wikipedia page is not great. It's Wikipedia. It's not a great place to go for like information. So I wanted to learn more. So it turned into finding some like YouTube documentary type content.
Yeah, it's so sad about Wikipedia. Can I mention something about Wikipedia?
Yeah.
It's so crazy how much like propaganda interest started taking place on Wikipedia, it feels like. So like, for example, there was a contest of like butchering people in Nanjing during the rape of Nanjing. And so then one day the entry would say something like, oh, they were having a killing contest, and it was even reported on like the Shimbun, this newspaper. But then the next day you look at it, it'll be like, it was just a sensationalized headline from the time. This didn't even happen. But the reality is that it did happen. And that the second, editing of Wikipedia is just the interested groups of people trying to hide the truth from what it was. And so I think Wikipedia, it's very unfortunate how much like people's interests have gone to the way of the truth telling on Wikipedia.
So now that Wikipedia is not trustworthy, obviously.
Wikipedia was never trustworthy
Well-
because anybody can edit a Wikipedia page.
Okay. But now you're seeing like there's people that are making it more of an effort
Actively lying
to
and-
lean
and-
it
yeah.
one way or the other, like propaganda. But then the New York Times, like, and I will say this: any newspaper, and I was just talking to somebody else about this the other day. Anytime I've had firsthand experience, and then I see the article in the newspaper, it's never accurate. It's rarely, like, I've been a part of the LGBTQ, like lots of parades and lots of, they'll always like, there's like 200 people. Like, there were thousands of people. It's just interesting to me. Or even just on a little thing, it'll be not accurate. I mean, what? I like to listen to Democracy Now. Do you ever listen to Democracy Now, the War and Peace Report? But Amy Goodman, she's been a dedicated journalist for a long time, kind of a grassroots organization. Do you have any source that you trust that, is it
I
just
just read history books now. It's or like primary source documents, because like I feel like the truth is a lot. It's not someone trying to sensationalize it. Right? Like, I feel like a lot of journalists, they have their own opinion, and then maybe they're not trying to have propaganda or even censor themselves, but then they're like, what if my boss sees this and he doesn't like it and blah, blah, blah. So then, like, they self-censor. Like, I feel like Washington Post, before Jeff Bezos bought it, and now, like, it's like a whole different tune. For example, so I think, I don't know if I can trust any of those sources. What do you think, Nathaniel? You're younger than me.
I don't often use the New York Times or the Washington Post for news, but I do use a site app called Ground News, and they're pretty good.
Oh, Ground News. Okay.
Yeah.
Ground News? What makes you think they're good? How do you?
So they will give you the articles. They will give you articles about the exact same thing, written from a very right perspective and a very left perspective.
Oh.
And so you'll see the difference, and then they'll show you an article that is far more centrally aligned in terms of the way that the information is presented. And so it's really hard to find some area of media that's not biased, slanted.
I guess.
And so if you can read the media from both sides and kind of derive your opinion from that is the best way to kind of form your knowledge around everything.
Or just be like Napoleon. Napoleon used to tell his secretary to put all the headlines in the envelope, and if 6 months later, if it's still relevant, then he's going to look more into it. If it's not relevant, then after 6 months, he's going to forget about it and continue conquering Europe.
Wow. That's wild. That's wild. That's how some people pay their credit card bills, but yeah. Put it all in here and pull out the ones that still exist. Wow, that is interesting. Jenny, thank you. What else would you like us to know? People like me who, I want to make a difference in the world. I just, as much as I can, we want to get the word out or to be informed. Do you have, or anything else that you just want me to know about, or our listeners to know about?
I think we've covered a lot. But if you want to learn more, you can always subscribe to our YouTube channel, Pacific Front Untold. I think we're doing a Black History Month special, because it's very mind-blowing for me to learn about this recently, that like apparently there was a Japanese incendiary bomb happening in Oregon, and like the Black paratroopers who were not allowed to like go combat overseas because they were seen as inferior, they were like the paratroopers who basically saved Oregon from like wildfires in World War II.
Oh, fascinating.
And I didn't even know about this. Like apparently during like Emperor Meiji's birthday, they just sent out like 9,000 bombs. It was kind of like a YOLO move. And then like 900 bombs ended up in America. And it's very fascinating for me to even learn about that, because I mean, for me, and if this is coming from someone who's never fought a war, for me, I mean, I would not want to be in the front line of fighting a war. So in a way, I would be like, oh, hell yeah, I want to stay as a support role. But some people really,
Yeah. I want to peel potatoes like my dad did during the war. He made false teeth and peeled potatoes, according to my father. That's what he did during the war. Well,
but then we also don't learn about like Black Americans in World War II simply because they were then on the support roles. So then, like, for example, like Battle of Saipan and like the more historical moments, you don't see Black people on there because it's not a heroic act to be a person of support.
that was an example where they saved Oregon. I'm going to tune in. I want to watch that. Well, I thank you so much for taking all this time and explaining things to me. I'll be fascinated to watch this again when I'm editing it to see. I'm going to slow it way down and try to understand things. And I'll put things in the show notes. And again, we got to remember, like, this is so important to get the truth out, but also it's so important to take care of yourself. So keep laughing no matter what. And thank you for taking the time. Thanks for sitting in, Nathaniel.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jenny
Thank you
Chan.
so much.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for having me. Bye.
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 I want to thank my guest, Jenny Chan, for all this information, and my son, Nathaniel Norton, for sitting in with me, because all of this, honestly, is way over my head. I have not studied history as much as I should. And I do love learning. I'm an oral learner, so I did find it fascinating. And I do pray that we learn from the past, and can we please, somehow figure out a way to coexist without fighting over resources. If we listen to nature, we can learn there is enough for everybody. Especially if we go vegan. I'm going to say it, plant-based diet lowers your carbon footprint more than any other thing you can do. So consider it, if not on every meal, maybe a couple. I have to say, I follow a lot of vegan chefs on Instagram right now, and wow, there's no lack of deliciousness in a vegan diet. Well, do what you do. I'm going to do what I do. And remember, no matter what, keep laughing.